Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Annotations After Dark. My name is Michelle, your resident horror enthusiast and horror expert, fellow teacher to the exquisite Claudine.
Hi, I'm Claudine Aguilar, teacher turned podcaster. Let's see how this goes. But we decided to bring Wuthering Heights into your home because we find it exhilarating. And this specific section of the book, I think, is probably the most exhilarating. So much happens in these
So
7 chapters.
much happens. So, welcome to episode 3, the greatest love story ever told.
Are we
Many
sure?
question marks.
And I'm here in
Oh.
California. I'm so excited to be home. It's been so much fun being home back in my
I'm so
state.
happy that you are. And
Yeah.
speaking of returning home, that is really
Nice
where we
segue.
pick up. That's where we're going to pick up with our story in Wuthering Heights. So just as a narrative overview, like in our previous episodes, we're going to take things thematically. So the items we're going to talk about today are Heathcliff's money and its acquisition. How did he get to where he is when he comes back in chapters 10 through 17? We'll then turn to Cathy and her love and happiness with Edgar, as well as the triangle that is now formed with Heathcliff's return. We'll have a discussion about class and gatekeeping as it comes to where Edgar is situated, juxtaposed to Heathcliff's background and where he has elevated himself to.
Yeah, because you have to remember that, when it comes to class at this time, it's not about money. It's about
No.
name and status. So even
Yes.
though Heathcliff now comes back with all this money, he still doesn't. Just the fact that he's new money is bad enough, but the fact that we don't know reputably how he got his money, that's going to be big for Edgar.
They say more money, more problems, and that's the case for Heathcliff. It's true.
Basically.
It doesn't solve his problems at all, which brings us to another theme of trauma bonding and love that really is evident and really brings us to one of the peaks of this story. Is this the greatest love story? Or, is it love? Baby, don't hurt me. Trauma or love? What are we doing?
There is such
And then
a fine line.
it is razor thin. We'll end our conversation by looking at Heathcliff's character, who he is, discuss his actions towards other characters in the novel.
Yeah,
So,
actions that really show off his character. And, when you're talking about love, when you're talking about this connection with another human being, your own character and who you are as a person is so important in establishing a healthy relationship with someone else. And so I think that his treatment of these other characters and his true show of character kind of lends us some evidence towards maybe this isn't the greatest love story of all time. Because when you have love,
yeah.
the thought of hurting other people like this becomes almost unfathomable if you know what love is. So I think it's going to be a
Right.
fun discussion. I'm really excited.
Yes, me too. It's going to be a good one. Why don't you start us off with an overview? Again, we're talking through chapters 10 through 17. We'll have show notes linked below in case you have different versions. But kick us off, Claudine. What happens?
Yeah, so 10 through 17, this is a little confusing for some readers because some of your books are going to be broken into these very easy to follow chapters. And for others of you, it's broken into volumes and they restart the chapters. So, like Michelle said, we'll have these show notes for you in the bottom so you can follow along where we are. But basically, chapter 10, we've just finished off. Lockwood has had that awkward walk home with Heathcliff. He met a ghost. He now has the sniffles. And Nellie has been telling him this whole backstory, and we come in at this point in the novel where he is still lamenting the fact that he got ill, but he's so excited to be able to hear all this tea from Nellie about what's going on. And one of the things that intrigues him, and indeed would have intrigued the Victorian audience at this time, is the fact that Heathcliff is back and now he has all this money. It has been 3 years. I think of note is it's interesting that even though it's been 3 years have passed, Catherine's only been married 6 months, which means she didn't immediately get married to Edgar when Heathcliff left. it makes you wonder, did she wait around for a little bit, waiting for Heathcliff to come back? And then two and a
Mm.
half years in, she gets married. But Heathcliff does eventually come back, and this girl is overjoyed, right? In her
Can
mind,
I
she's,
interrupt you real quick,
yeah.
Claudine? Can you remind us just briefly, why did he leave?
Oh, yes, I'm so sorry. So, where we left off last time in the novel was that Catherine was having this conversation with Nellie, and she was basically saying, "What do I do? Edgar has asked me to marry him. This is the smartest thing to do, but I love Heathcliff, but I also love Edgar." And she's basically this little girl trying to choose between her heart and her mind, Edgar being her
Mhm.
mind, Heathcliff being her heart. But all Heathcliff hears in, classic love triangle trope are the bad things, all the logical reasons why Catherine can't be with Heathcliff. And hearing these negative things from Catherine, he decides to just run away. And he's going to show
Mhm.
everybody that he's the guy. Reminds me of that Ryan Reynolds movie where he's like
Oh,
fat. It's a terrible movie, but he's fat and then he gets really
gosh.
like hunky and slims down and then he's going to show
Yeah.
everybody in his old town incel behavior. But anyway, the point is, so
Coming
Heathcliff is
from a
now
real
back.
crazy guy, yeah.
I
Go
know,
ahead,
right?
sorry.
Ryan Reynolds or Heathcliff? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. We won't go there.
Birds of a
Um,
feather.
so Heathcliff comes home and he's hell bent on committing revenge against everybody. But Catherine is so happy with him coming home, and she's just like a giddy little girl that he forgets for a second all his revenge. He forgets that he's gonna come see Catherine, kill her brother, and then die by suicide. And he sits down with
Wild.
them. I
Wild
mean, this guy,
choices, right?
greatest love story ever told, Michelle. So, so he forgets for a second all that. He sits down and he has tea. We start seeing how Catherine loves both Edgar and Heathcliff in different ways, and she just wants them to be friends because she just wants a family again. And this whole time, we kind of get some background from Nellie saying that Catherine has been happy with Edgar, but not fully happy. She still has moments of depression, moments of sadness because
Mhm.
Heathcliff isn't there. So when Heathcliff returns, she feels like her world is complete. However,
Mm,
just because she loves these two men doesn't mean these two men love each other. And therein we start having a problem. This
right.
culminates, yeah. And so Edgar is really showing some classist ideals, which is to be expected from someone at the station. And Heathcliff still kind of wants to kill everybody. So they're both kind of not being the best friends to poor little Catherine, who it finally culminates in them fighting with one another, almost throwing down. Catherine gets sick because of this, or makes herself sick because of this. She's so upset that her family is falling apart, and Edgar gives her an ultimatum. It's me or him. Worst thing you could have said to Catherine in that moment. And meanwhile, Heathcliff has decided, you know what? The best revenge against Edgar is to marry his little sister and take all his money. So while this is all happening, Heathcliff, on a side quest, goes, conquers Isabella, kills her dog, or at least attempts to, runs away with the girl, destroying Edgar's entire happiness. And the chapter ends with Isabella finding her way out of Heathcliff's evil clutches and vamoosing out of there, Catherine dying, Heathcliff going insane, Edgar going insane, which will ultimately set us up for the second generation, the next part of the novel. But
Wow, so much happens,
I
and,
hope that made sense. I was
it
trying so hard
does.
to keep it short.
It does. Well, no, what you give us is, like, a wonderful, like, platform to jump off from because like you said, so much happens, and some of these are plot points to set us up for what's to come. If this is
Mhm.
our climax and we're hearing this epic of a love triangle and the fallout from the love triangle, we have a lot of, as you would say, dominoes have been setting up, and now we get to see them being pushed over and what the
Yeah,
end result is going to be. So, with that, I think the themes that we've chosen are going to be really helpful to like guide our conversation. But
absolutely.
we want you guys to keep in mind we're going to look at all of this through the lens of Catherine and Heathcliff. because their relationship is really what's at the center of these chapters and at the heart of the novel in general. But if we view these themes through their relationship and how it affects and ruffles to the other characters, it'll be easy to follow and really engaging. So tell us, like, Heathcliff leaves, he gets this money, he comes back transformed. So how did he get this money? Where has he been? And does this really make a difference?
Make a difference in what way?
Well, we know he was an outcast to begin with. He's adopted. He's a person of no station. He has no last name. If anything, he's Heathcliff, right? So what does this money do for him, and what impact does it have when he returns?
I see. So I love that you mentioned that his name was Heathcliff. The reason it's Heathcliff is because he has no surname, and he's not recognized by the Earnshaw family. For all his intents and purposes of helping Heathcliff and giving him a family, old Mr. Earnshaw does not bestow the family name on him, which means he's not recognized as a son, which means his name is just Heathcliff. And remember what we said in the very first episode, in the context note? Money matters very little at this time in the Victorian era. Indeed, in Europe, money matters very little, even to this day. It's about your family connections and how old your family is and how long and well established your money is.
How
and how many
respectable
generations
your
have gone.
family is, right?
Yeah, how many generations have gone to Eton, like that kind of thing. And so for Heathcliff, no, all the money does for Heathcliff is buy him access to these circles. He can now afford something like Wuthering Heights. He can now afford to be in proximity, whereas before he wouldn't have even been able to do that. And even if he had become a merchant and climbed his way up and made really good money by starting an industry, a business, I think the Rockefellers, think the Vanderbilts, that was enough in the United States of America to lend you respectability, not so in the UK. So even if he had receipts for how he made his money, he still would be a social pariah. He would not be welcome. So the fact that we don't even know how he made his money. Once again, Lockwood is asking all these questions of Nellie. This is all gossip. This is all tea. And so I'm going to read a quote from chapter 10 when Lockwood says, did he finish his education on the continent and come back a gentleman? So, did he go to Europe, the continent, and finish his education and then actually make himself into a gentleman? Or did he get a sizar's place at college, which a sizar's place is usually towards Cambridge or Trinity colleges, these really old colleges of prestige. And it essentially meant that you were of such an intellectual and educational stature that you could do a work study program, essentially. Work in order to pay for your part of your tuition or your whole tuition. And then he says, or did he escape to America and earn honors by drawing blood from his foster country? In other words, this sets us at the Revolutionary War, where the United States of America is turning against the UK, turning against Great Britain, looking for their independence. And it's establishing Heathcliff as even an ignoble anti-hero in that he would turn back on country and help a revolutionary war in order to rise up. But all of these are very romantic ideas of how Heathcliff could have made his money.
They're all very noble, and given how he left and given what his interests were and how he went about his business beforehand, are awfully too romantic for him. So I always like the last one. What's the last one that they say?
Or did he make a fortune more promptly on the English highway? In other words, did he steal his money? And so in many ways, I love this scene because it reminds me of, again, in Princess Bride, where, the little boy is now actually,
reference.
yeah, he's now starting to get really excited into Grandpa's story. At first, he was just listening to it because, he's a little sick and whatever, just like Lockwood. But now he's into it and he's asking questions. And these would have been the same questions that the audience would have had. And for the Englishman at this point, how he made his money. Very important.
Yes.
It kind of, to make another really quick reference, it also reminds me of Hamilton, where, Ehrenberg, or how did a bastard orphan son of a whore and a Scotsman trapped in the middle of a forgotten spot in the Caribbean and squalor grow up to be a hero and a scholar? It's that kind of question. Because at this time, just like with Hamilton rising up, this would have been the only way to rise up and to, either be a thief or to join a war where you can prove that you're more than anyone bargained for. And so, yeah, again, all very romantic notions. Lockwood has always been kind of a fool, but that last answer shows that he's not that much of a fool. He knows that he could have stolen this money too.
Sure. I mean, he doesn't put anything beyond Heathcliff, especially hearing all of these tales. Now, in your summary overview, what I find fascinating is that his plan isn't to come back and establish himself as lord or a contender to the estate.
No.
Instead, he wants to do some peacocking, show
Yep.
Catherine what she's been missing, murder her
Mm-hmm.
brother, and escape punishment by killing himself.
Yep.
And literally laying this all at her feet as if
Yes.
her turning to Edgar. And again, I do have to give him credit. The words he hears from her is basically how he's too dastardly for her to ever marry. So that's the last thing he hears before running off. But he does all this work to lie it all at her feet
Yeah,
without
just
ever having confessed his own love,
right.
interest to her at all.
Oh my gosh, you're so right. He's being such a, for those of you elder millennials, he's being such a Xander in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. He's like being so friggin' annoying. You
Yeah.
haven't even told her how you felt, you coward. You don't have the bravery to do something like that, but you have the gall to do something like this, which is come back, kill her own brother, and like you said, kill himself and really get her under her skin and seek revenge against her for the
And
words
orphan
he,
her. He would
yeah, and
truly
orphan her.
orphan her and leave her in a space alone in the world as he was when he, well, it's assumed, we don't know where he came from exactly, but he
Yeah.
was an orphan and that's how he would leave her. So that kind of brings us to Cathy's love and this love triangle that we have going on. So she is already fond and has feelings for Edgar, whether they're romantic feelings or romanticizing what her life would be like as the greatest lady of this town, wherever it
Mm-hmm.
is that they live. It's her ambition that pulls her to Edgar and his family, their wealth, their status, their class, and beauty, right? She loves that. So we have that angle for her. And then with Heathcliff's return, we have this more body, like base enjoyment that happens with him. She's giddy, she's, wound up. So talk to me about this love triangle. What's going on with Catherine and Edgar versus Cathy and Heathcliff?
Yeah, for me, there's always been a duality, and we talked in earlier episodes about how Gothic narrative structure is all about duality. You brought that up. And
Hmm.
to me, Catherine has always had this kind of duality where she is both wild and proper. She wants to be the lady, but she also wants to run free in the moors.
Lady
Um,
and the Tramp. Mm.
yeah, she's very much like, she's a
Not that
wild child at heart.
Catherine's a tramp, but
No, no.
we get
Um,
it.
yeah, no, and so she's just. I feel bad for her. She's the kind of woman that when I read about her in literature, I wonder who she would have been had she been really free to make the choices that you and I have, and that so many women in today's
Yeah.
time have. Not all women. And so it makes me wonder about that for her. And so I think, given that duality, that her love for Edgar and Heathcliff represent this two sides of herself that she can't fulfill without the other. She could run away with Heathcliff. She could turn her back on everything, but I don't think she would be happy like that. She likes comfort. She likes the money and the respect and the power and prestige that the name Linton offers her. In this
Hmm.
society, that, like we were just saying with class, is very important. But with Edgar, she doesn't get that passion. She doesn't get the joy. She doesn't get life and living. And I think in this way, Bronte is criticizing the class structure that forces you to sell your soul and your happiness for comfort, safety, and money.
I mean,
And
gosh,
so
that's what we do today, though. I mean, not much has
yeah,
changed.
no, no,
You've
not much
got a
has
lot
changed at all.
of public figures, and they do trade their
Hmm.
passions and desires for that comfort and the safety that money and status brings them, all the while kind of making them, I don't want to use the word crazy, but really causing rips internally, emotionally, and mentally within themselves because it's like you are happy, but then you're fighting these urges. And I don't mean urge like,
Yeah.
I just want to, run out of here, but things that make you feel impassioned. And that
Yes.
doesn't need to be like sex. It doesn't need to be love of another person. It could be a lot of different things, your own
Yeah.
ambitions and goals for yourself. So,
Yeah.
beating against the gilded cage is really where she is.
Exactly. And so in some ways, I know that everybody kind of hates on Catherine because she's not exactly the best human being either. You know, she has a lot of flaws to her, but I think what I love so much about Bronte's novel is that everybody is a little flawed. Nobody is perfect. Heathcliff takes the cake, but even he you can sympathize with because you know what made him the way he was. And at every turn, the deeper you get into this novel, you do realize that Bronte is really criticizing the social structure. She's really she knows that she is in a gilded cage. Even she, you know, she has comforts. She has a maid. She wouldn't want to be in other people's lot. But I think with this book, and especially in Catherine's feelings towards Heathcliff and Edgar, and this having to make a choice between the life you want to lead and the choices you want to make and the freedom you want to have of telling all that to your husband in order to be protected. I think Bronte herself is beating her wings against this cage and showing like it's not that Catherine is bad, is that Catherine doesn't have the chance to be Catherine in a world that forces her to choose between these two things. And so we even see this in Edgar and Heathcliff's relationship towards one another. Like Catherine is really trying to forge a relationship between these two men because I think she believes in her heart of hearts that if these two men can be family and then Heathcliff can move in next door and they can all have tea every day, that they can all be together and it'll be perfect for her. Her world will be complete. And
Yes.
it's not that way. It's just not that way.
Well, it's not that way because she doesn't make it that way. And this has been my struggle because I agree with you. Like, Catherine isn't the most likable character, but she's not despicable, right?
Mm-mm.
I think everything you mentioned about choosing between two sides of herself, they're both all her. No one should have to make those choices. And she didn't have to. That's my argument here that she wants to set things up so that her husband and her bosom all live in this full, like state of friendship and family, but she
Mhm.
doesn't make situation so that that can happen, right? She doesn't tell Edgar, and this keeping and Edgar's perceptions of Heathcliff,
For sure.
she doesn't tell Edgar he's so in love with her. He is such a kind person. When she is acting up against Nellie, he is like flabbergasted. Yeah.
Remind the readers when that happens in the novel, because this does not happen in
Oh,
10 through 17. This happens earlier, right?
this happens earlier when Edgar comes over and there's a little tiff between Catherine and Heathcliff. And Heathcliff is like, hey, you're spending all this time with Edgar. Why don't you spend any more time with me? Catherine's like, you're a droll, basically. You don't say anything
Yeah.
interesting. Why would I want to spend time with you? And that
That's right.
hurts
This is like
Heathcliff.
yeah, this is
Yes,
3 years before Heathcliff leaves and makes his money. This is when, Linton
correct.
Edgar Linton is still courting.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And she just gets in that little tizzy. And Nellie's trying to like, come on, girl, get it together. And
Mhm,
Catherine
mhm,
pinches
mhm.
her and later on slaps her in front of Edgar. And he is just not about it. He's like,
Yeah,
absolutely not. He says, you can't treat people that way.
yeah,
But the whole time, Catherine doesn't represent Heathcliff to Edgar as her brother, as
yeah,
someone that is an equal. She doesn't say it at all. So when he's dogged out by Hindley, when she dogs him out herself, he would have been accepting, like, this is my adoptive brother. I love him. He's my best friend. Edgar, I think, would be like, oh, well, great. Bring him along. She never does that. She never
that's true.
does.
I mean, I take on a very similar but one little distinction with Edgar. I think that Edgar is incredibly classist and, given the nature of this era, probably even racist. He sees them as a lasker, in other words, what they would have called an Indian person back then. He sees them as dark skinned. So I think Edgar would have forever seen him as other. I think that while
Sure.
Edgar is very kind, and I completely agree with you. I love the way he stands up for Nellie, and I love the way that he's like, I can't with you. You can't treat people this way. And so, even though he recognizes a class structure, he still believes in kindness, fairness, maybe not equality. That's
Right.
too
He
much. It's
still
somewhat of
functions within his
yeah,
structure, but he's not going to be out here beating the servants. And,
exactly.
but
But
a lot of
but
that
I
comes.
what I was
Go ahead.
gonna what
Go
I was
ahead.
sorry, what I was gonna say, sorry, because I was like, "Wait, I had a point." But what I what I was gonna say was, so even though I think that he would have always seen Heathcliff as an other, he would have never really fully embraced him in their class structure. I think, and this is where I completely agree with you, that if Catherine had made it known how much this person, how much Heathcliff meant to her, how she sees him as family, I think Edgar has enough kindness and especially love for Catherine, because there's evidence in the book that he bent over backwards and did everything that she wanted. I think there's a chance that he would have accepted Heathcliff into their family,
But
if not an
yeah,
equal as her pet, which is disgusting, but it is of the time.
agreed.
Now, would Heathcliff have accepted that position? That is a
That's a
question that
whole
I'd
nother
like.
story.
That's a whole other story. And I think that's where Catherine is delusional. I think she doesn't understand the complexity. She wants everything to be simple, like a little girl. And it's like, no, honey, you as a woman should understand how complex this is. But I'm getting ahead of myself.
No, you're not. I mean, it's so valid that her it makes you wonder, is she aware of of the complexity of her own situation? It seems not, but I can't really find evidence that she is conscious of her double-sidedness.
Well,
Right?
in her,
I think
well,
she
maybe not her
experiences the
double-sidedness.
frustration and the friction between it,
Yeah.
right? I think that
Yeah.
is there, but I don't think she's
Agreed.
literally conscious of the structures. I think she reacts to them rather than know why that's happening or why she feels the way she does.
I completely agree with that, Reed. I was gonna push back and be like, no, there's evidence that she's like really reflecting on her choices and she understands the cage she is in. But I think you're right that her recognition of these things are more reactive than they are really introspective. And that she doesn't fully grasp the depth of where she finds herself insofar as that gilded cage. I think for her it's
Well,
like all even
yeah.
fit.
And there's a good quote about that. As we talked about, Heathcliff returns. Catherine is super enthralled by his presence. They're going on all of these, long strolls. Edgar's like, WTF, like, what is happening? And he finds him kind of revolting by his actions. Like, he's dressed in money, but he doesn't have like the money. Like, he's still kind of this creeping figure. And I don't mean
Yeah.
creepy, I mean creeping, like lurking. And
Yeah.
it doesn't seem like he's there with great intentions, especially as he's starting to draw the eye of Isabella. But they're not mixing their oil and vinegar. And Catherine says, well,
Yeah.
if I cannot keep Heathcliff for my friend, if Edgar will be mean and jealous, I'll try to break their hearts by breaking my own. And that really encompasses her reaction. So she's willing, very much like Heathcliff in a way, to hurt herself in order to punish other people
Yeah.
instead of finding a way to build a bridge.
Yeah.
She's like, let's just
Absolutely.
burn it.
I mean, yeah, she is very nihilistic in that way. She is like a petulant child. She just reacts.
Yeah.
Everything is very reactionary to her. And it's just this is like one of those novels where it feels like a modern movie where you're just dramatic irony watching everybody make mistakes and you're like, that is
Mm,
the absolute wrong thing to do. And yet
yeah.
you know that they're gonna do it because it's so true to their character, and yet Catherine is this petulant child who'd rather set fire to everything than actually find a solution. And then Heathcliff is someone who is so happy to let that fire burn and even stoke it on that he
Hmm.
creates this unnecessary drama, and Edgar is too much of a limp noodle to actually he doesn't have he knows what's right and wrong, but,
Yeah.
like, with Nellie, he
He's
doesn't
too
stand up for what's
protected
right and
by
wrong.
his class to actually take action, right? He is not he is not of the body in
Mm-hmm.
the way, because we talked about this before. Heathcliff is of the earth. He's
Yeah.
base. He is Caliban,
Yes.
right? Catherine is air, but she also has this base quality. She's able to exist in both realms, right? Which is why I think she relates to them each in different ways. And then Linton is so protected by his classism, his manners, his polite society that no, he's not going to do anything about it. He'll make somebody else do something about it. The limp
Um,
noodle, like he's not that man who's going to say, I'm going to put my hand on you and let you know I'm here and you're going to stop, right?
yeah, the fact
He's just like,
that
stop.
yeah, like
No.
when and that when they get into that fight and they're about to throw down and Catherine is really upset about it, but she thinks they're about to like meet at fisticuffs, and
Hmm.
then Edgar goes and calls for his servants. And it's like, oh, he's not going to fight this battle. He's going to stick all his servants onto Heathcliff, making it an
Right.
unfair fight, really showing the inequality of the
Right.
society. And so, that turns Catherine off to Edgar because it's like, you can't, like you said, you are so protected by class structure. You aren't of nature. If you start something in nature, you
Right.
better have the cojones to like back it up and finish it yourself. And
Right.
and the fact that he doesn't in this fight between, Edgar is made known of what Heathcliff is making love in the Victorian sense. In other words, he's courting Isabella without permission,
Right.
and Edgar's pissed off. And even Catherine is pissed off about this. Remember, like she's mad that Heathcliff is going after Isabella, knowing that Heathcliff
Oh,
doesn't love her.
yes.
Um,
Let's actually pick up that thread right there because
yeah.
trauma bonding and love, we're really able to see the dynamics of not only Heathcliff and Catherine's relationship with each other through deciding, which of these or both a little bit of each they have, but also their relationships with other people. And I think we've talked very well about Edgar and what that relationship is. So let's bring in Isabella as a character who is Edgar's little sister, who upon Heathcliff's return, develops a secret infatuation with him that she doesn't share with anyone until she's kind of like Catherine. Just like the tension, the buildup is just too much. She's driving herself mad, if you will, with desiring Heathcliff. So tell us more about what you think about that.
About Isabella and Heathcliff.
Yeah. Is this love? Is this what is this?
All
What is
right.
this?
So apropos of, you know, I always thought of Isabella as a little bit of a foil to Catherine.
Hmm.
They're both very similar in that, as we will see in later parts of this, when after Heathcliff and she get married, and after he reveals his true abusive nature, we will see her badass chingona side come out. She's gonna be.
Hmm.
You're gonna see a side to Isabella that is really redeeming, at least in my eyes. But at this point in the novel, Isabella's an 18-year-old little girl. She's had no experiences with men or with anything really. She's lived in the
No.
countryside, been protected by her parents and then her brother. And she lives in this fantasy world where the most she knows about romance is probably in the romance novels she reads, if she's even allowed those. So Isabella sees Heathcliff, and Heathcliff is at this point in time very handsome. He's got money, and he's just a little bit of a bad boy, like who
Hmm.
does a protected girl love more than anyone than the dastardly bad boy? Think Keira Knightley in Pirates of the Caribbean. And yeah, she's in love with
Yeah.
nice boy Orlando Bloom, but it's Captain Sparrow that's really got her thinking. Because
There's
I mean,
adventure here. There's something
yeah.
new. I mean, it's just new, for God's sake. The only people she
Hmm.
sees are Catherine, Nellie, Edgar, and maybe the occasional doctor. Maybe
Yeah.
the boy that brings them stuff from town, right? That's it. So this
Yeah.
guy, he's hot, he's new, he's friends with the family. He keeps coming around.
I mean, I remember as a teenager having my first crush, and just like the fact that they walked into the room took your breath away, and the
Oh my
possibility of
gosh.
what could happen took your
The
breath away. And
bubbles.
if they said hi to you, you're like, "Ha." It's a beautiful time to be alive, and also the worst time to be alive when you experience that for the
Yeah.
first time. But
A lot.
So much,
A lot going
so
on.
much. It's so overwhelming. And this, we have to
Ugh.
remember, is what's happening to Isabella. And she sees Heathcliff, and she's probably invented this whole thing in her head about the romance that is possible there. Because you have to remember, even though he's spending a lot of time with Catherine, Catherine's married, and so in Isabella's naive, innocent mind, they can't possibly be into each other. She loves my brother Edgar, and he's just a friend, and he's fair game. So I think Isabella thinks that she's falling in love, like we all do when we have that
Sure,
first
I mean, this is
experience.
the crush of all crushes, probably the only one she's ever had.
Yeah, exactly. And in the meantime, we have seen upon his return who Heathcliff is. We know that
Right.
Heathcliff, I mean, he was willing just to hurt Catherine, the person he claims to love the most. He was willing to kill her brother, kill himself, and lay it all at her feet so that she knows that her actions brought this. You made me do this. I mean, it's so friggin' toxic. I'm like a dog with a bone. I will not let this go. He is not okay. And now he has set his sights on Isabella, and, it's Catherine herself who tells Heathcliff that Isabella has a crush on him.
And this is probably said so teasingly, like, "Oh, guess what?" Because that's their relationship, at least the way Catherine sees it, right?
Mhm.
Like,
I
"Oh, guess what, little girl?" That they would have their kiki and,
Yeah, and this is, I
giggle
think,
and
when
make bad jokes.
exactly, and I think this is when Catherine first starts suspecting that Heathcliff is darker than she ever gave him credit for. Because she expects that little, like, kiki and a little laughter to the side, and whereas she wants to keep it just at that, he wants to go total cruel intentions with this and, like, lay
Well,
wait.
let me just say one thing there, though. Catherine's has a scheme too. Catherine
Yeah,
intentionally
yes,
mentions this to Heathcliff because her plan is to get him to be part of the family. That's really what it is. She's
that's
trying
an
to put in the
interesting read.
idea.
I didn't see that the first
Oh,
time around. When I read that, I
oh,
didn't,
so
but I completely agree with you. I think you're absolutely
yeah,
right.
I'll be with Edgar. You can marry Isabella, which will then elevate you, right?
Yeah,
And now that we're family, we can be together. That's the
right.
plan. And Heathcliff says, "You can torture me if you want. But while you're torturing me, let me have some fun." Referencing Isabella, he wants to play with her. Now, does Catherine fully understand what that means to him? I don't think so, but I think she's got the smell of it, right? And this is where you're coming in with the cruel intentions vibes. I do think she's like, yeah, you can play with her a little bit. She doesn't get it. She's naive. She can learn. But, you should marry her. Let's be a family together.
I like that reading because I just I saw it a little bit more under the lens of cruel intentions, where, she was happy to go back to that cruelty and make fun of the little sister that was so annoying to her, and to kind of have that mean girl
That
laugh to the
and
side at the,
I
yeah,
think
at the,
it's both.
yeah. And so when he starts going too far, I think is when she's like, whoa, 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 whoa.
I think they wanna do both. I think for Catherine, this is the best of both worlds. She stays married to Edgar,
Hmm.
retains her money and her comforts, is bringing Heathcliff up in station so that when they are together, there's no question of why they're part of each other's family. He is now a man of a certain station because he's been welcomed into this family. And so their relationship, whatever that's going to be, I don't know, is more acceptable. And she feels like she's elevating and helping him.
Yeah. No, and I agree with that. And that's it actually changed my reading because I thought it was just like she was being a mean girl and she decided at the end, like, okay, too far, too far. Why are you now trying to actively hurt these people? But I like your reading of it
Yeah.
too, that it's also she wants to create this happy family. But and that just goes to show this trauma bond, like I think what fascinates me most, just to bring it back to all of that conversation between Catherine and Heathcliff, and what are they to one another? Because that's kind of the central conversational question. What are these two people to one another? People talk about them being the greatest love story to have ever been told, but
Mm.
I struggle to find love between these two. I mean, there's obvious love, but in the grand scheme of Plato's several different kinds of love, what is this love that they have for one another? I often say, how do you know that something's real love? And that's really hard to define. I mean, there are thousands of years of philosophical lecture around that question.
Yeah.
But to me, if I had to answer for me what love is, it's giving your partner the last brownie, even though you were really craving it because they really want it. There's something, and I don't want to say it's ultimately sacrificial, but it's like, it's a place where your happiness is very important and you're fulfilled in yourself. And the person you
I
choose as a
yes.
partner then becomes equally important. Their happiness becomes equally important. You don't want them to be unhappy. You don't, it's not like, I don't want to make it like this giving tree sacrificial thing. I'm talking more like you are
No.
happy to give things up because it makes them so happy. Do you know what I'm saying?
It's
I
a
don't want to
it's a
sound,
fulfillment. It's a fulfillment. It's like you seeing your partner being fed also in turn feeds you. And it's not necessarily that you're like giving your rib and they're eating and you are like becoming like less and less than as they're gorging and gorging. That's not what I mean.
no.
But to see that, hey, my partner is really loves the movies and oh, now they're going to film festivals and I can now we get to have more conversations about this and I can
Yeah.
see how excited they are being in that realm. It makes me want to be like, well, you know what? I'll come along. Like
Yeah.
these types of things.
Yeah, it's like, so the other day, just a little side note, but it's important to explain why, for me, it's really hard to see Catherine and Heathcliff as people who are really in love. The other day, I was watching my stupid reality TV. You know how much I love my reality TV. I was watching Vanderpump Rules, the latest iteration, and in it, this boy, even though he's 35 years old, he's a boy the way he behaves. Marcus knows that his girlfriend is overhearing him, and he's so angry with her that he lets her overhear him say, "You know what? I think it's just I don't think I love her anymore. I think when she does things like this, it makes me feel like I'm falling out of love with her." And I remember turning to
Wow.
Adam, my husband, who I forced to watch these things with me. And I
It's
paused.
love.
I know, right? That's an ultimate sacrifice. He watches reality TV with me. Um, I paused it and I
Bless
looked
his
at
heart.
him. Yeah, and I paused it and I looked at him and I said, "I can't believe he said that." Because love is so also it's the strongest thing ever, and at the same time, it's so fragile. If you say that so that your partner can hear you say it, you're intentionally trying to hurt them, which is so toxic at worst. Or
Yeah.
at best, you are manipulating their feelings and causing hurt in order to get a desired reaction. And either way,
Yeah.
you should never want to hurt your partner that way. And for me, the reason that Heathcliff and Catherine are just I feel for them both individually. They are such fully, even Heathcliff, who is rather kind of two-dimensional in his vengeance plot, is so rounded out by context of his upbringing that I
Mhm.
feel for these two people individually, but when you put them together, it's like this is a terrible volatile mixture. It is gun,
Right.
like Nellie says, it's gunpowder and fire.
And that's why I think there is that question that you brought up to me, which, is this a trauma bond? And I hate to call it a trauma bond per se, because they do go through traumatic things together, such as, old Earnshaw's death, right? They both lose a father figure. They're both under Hindley's purview, where Heathcliff really gets the boot of it. And Catherine too, she's kind of ripped from her friend, although she is held still at her station.
But there's
Um,
abuse in both. There's abuse in
there
both
is like
contexts.
emotional
Different
abuse,
level.
physical and emotional abuse, right? And
Mhm.
knowing for them, knowing that they could always come back to each other was how they kept each other safe and how they, would run the moors and be able to escape and be each other's freedom and
Yeah.
escape. Escapism is what they had until Catherine found a different escape. And there was no other escape for Heathcliff. Catherine found the Lintons. Heathcliff found nothing, nor did he really seek anything. So to me, like love, sure. I think more of like thieves together, right? Like your ride or die homie, where the love there doesn't feel romantic to me, but seems like a knowing, like I have friends that I've gone to school with since second grade. And some of them, I mean, we were in the same school from second grade through high school, the same class, did all the things. I feel like I know them, like their soul in a way that I will probably never know other people
Yeah. Your childhood
because
friends are
you
like that.
saw them from when they're not clouded by society and, you saw their rawness of their
Yeah.
child spirit. And
You
then they
didn't see
grew.
their mask, the mask that they put on
There
that
was
you
no
now can
mask
see
at
as
the
a
time.
mask because it's
Yeah.
built off of something very core,
And you
and
can
you can
see,
see the
like,
core.
that's bullshit.
Yeah.
Or if it's now who they are, you're like, wow, that's like really, that's so different from who I know them to be. And I think that's where Heathcliff and Catherine reside for me. It's like their souls know each other from this youth and these experiences, but I don't think they actually know each other. Just like my friends, like we see each other and it feels like time's never passed, but I don't really know anything about their lives.
Yeah. And
But
it's
I feel
also
like I
like
know
yeah,
their essence.
yeah. Well, and I also feel like when I see these two, I see two people who have wild freedom at their core. These are two people who bonded over the fact that they love the moors, thinking of Emily Bronte
Hmm.
here, that they love that wildness, that freedom, that transcendental, romantic
Mm,
disdain for society together.
yes.
And they are forced apart, like we've said before, by all these constraints and society, and so it always kind of pisses me off that they share their secrets of like their limitations and their hatred for society and the boxes they were put in. But here's where I'll give a point to Catherine, even though she's not off my shit list. I will say that she was always looking to build him up and was always she was even happy to see him married to Isabella and to, as long as he's happy, push him to a place where he could find freedom. At the moment where she goes to find whatever freedom in this society she can, he shits all over it. And that for me is why Heathcliff pisses me off, and this may be my very personal reading on this, but it's just like I'm here for you and all your struggles. Why won't you be here for me and mine? And no, instead, he becomes, if you read the quotes in this chapter, which if you go to our bonus episode where we really dig into quotes and have conversations around them, the quotes surrounding Heathcliff's conversation of his love for Catherine are just so full of anger and hate and a true misunderstanding of her position in society and why she made the choices she made that really anger me towards Heathcliff, even as I have a very sympathetic heart towards him and give me sympathy towards Catherine's situation. He claims to love Catherine, and yet he treats her so dismally. Look at all the things he does to her emotionally, threatening her essentially, making her feel like this is all her fault. Like even her dying is gonna hurt him more than anything. He's not thinking about her baby that she's about to
She's
have.
pregnant.
She's
Okay.
pregnant.
Let's
And
right
and
there.
yeah, he doesn't think about anything. He just goes into, he's just the worst. I hate him. Go ahead, Michelle. Take it away from me because I'm
So
like rambling now. He makes me so
no,
mad.
it's okay because like you said at the very beginning of this episode, a lot happens and it revs up to this point because this is the climax in our read of the novel and our taking a 5-act narrative arc. This is the climax. This is where the conflicts reach their peak and there is no passage but through. And sadly, the passage but through is Catherine dying and giving birth
Mhm.
to a new generation. Heathcliff marrying Isabella, who, spoiler alert, gives birth to a new generation. Thus,
Yeah.
a new cycle is set
Wait,
and begins.
we haven't gotten to.
No, but we're going to. We're
Okay,
going to
never
get
mind
there.
then.
So
Continue,
I just
Michelle.
back up 1 second. So in the midst of this, somewhere, sometime, Catherine gets pregnant.
Yeah.
Heathcliff has been away for a little bit because it turns out Hindley, Catherine's brother, is a drunkard
Mhm.
that we know, a gambler. And Heathcliff gambles and wins Henley's money, basically becoming the owner of Wuthering Heights.
He basically wins over his inheritance. He this fool gambles away his name essentially. Not his name, but his
Yes.
inheritance. Everything that comes with it.
So Heathcliff, through some scheming and time, becomes the lord of Wuthering Heights, and Hindley is now basically relegated a servant in his own home. And that's a scheme that he had, Heathcliff. And he told Catherine this scheme. And, to what detail? I'm not really sure. It's not really told to us. But in this time, Catherine becomes pregnant, and Heathcliff comes back and sees Nellie, and she's like, stay away from her. Don't go to her. She has changed. Her condition has changed, right? That's the elegant way of saying, I'm with child. But does Heathcliff listen and heed? No. He comes up in there, raises hell, sees that she's pregnant, and continues to emotionally erode her to the point where she becomes so sick. And what happens? She becomes so sick. Do you remember?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know you were prompting me. I was really taken in by your storytelling.
Oh, I was like,
yes. You're like, come
do
on,
you
buddy.
remember?
Your time.
Do you
Yes, I
remember?
Oh my God. So after this encounter, she kind of, if I remember this correctly, are you going to the fact that she is so manic that she kind of loses her wit and, goes
Yes.
into labor? And basically everything
Yes.
that the doctor he told Edgar and Nellie, don't excite her. She needs to be so calm. Like this could create another fainting. And Heathcliff comes in, excites her, and sends her into a madness spiral that she gives a premature birth, which ultimately is the reason she dies. Right?
She
Am I right?
dies.
Gold
Yeah,
star?
you're
Is
right.
that what you were
Ding,
going
ding,
for?
ding, ding. I was going to say gold stars.
Oh, good.
This is
I
very
was like,
sad. We're not happy about her death, especially
no.
how it comes about. And of course, Heathcliff is at the tree, banging his head against the tree, but he's the one that causes this to turn, right? She's already so delicate. He can see it.
And he's been
And
warned not to do this. I mean, if this isn't a metaphor for the fact that these two people are toxic for one another, and this goes back to what I was saying about love, Michelle. This isn't love. Like, I love you very much. I love you dearly. But you're not my soulmate. But if someone came to me and was like, do not go in and excite Michelle, she's very pregnant and she's in a dangerous condition. Like the last thing I would bring you brownies and the holiday, and we would just do all these very normal
oh,
things to keep you so safe. And the fact that Heathcliff claims to love this woman, and he has to know that childbearing is dangerous back then. He has to know that women die all the time. I hate this guy, Michelle. I hate this guy.
well, essentially, his actions, and people will read this differently because I have to say, if you just take the language from some of these moments without the context around them, they do sound so profoundly romantic. Like, what is my soul without his? Like, how can I live if my soul is dead? And all of this stuff. Yeah, it sounds romantic. But when you really look at the relationship, Catherine is holding on to not very much.
Yeah.
She's upset with her husband. She is upset with her friend. There's not much there for her. And in addition, she's pregnant. She ends up delivering early. The baby's named is Cathy, important in the doubling, especially with
Yeah.
Gothic literature, right? Catherine
Mm-hmm.
gives birth to now Cathy Linton.
Another
So
Cathy.
we have a Catherine Linton number 1, Catherine Linton number 2, right? And Edgar is left with this baby who he can't care for because he is distraught. He's lost his wife. He has this child that he can't even conceive. So Nellie becomes, just like she was for Heathcliff and just like she was for Harrington, she becomes the mother figure for the Cathy that starts our second generation. Now, with Catherine's death, Heathcliff then goes into a different tirade. What does he do? He takes off with Isabella, who he treats like a dog. And there's signs of that too when he hangs her dog
Yes,
outside of
okay.
the
This
house.
is what I wanted to get to, is the final act with Heathcliff mistreatment of Isabella, and just what Isabella becomes, even though she's not really prominent in the novel from here on out. I love that Bronte gave her such a badass exit where she's like, She grows
Yes.
up so quickly. But yeah, Heathcliff does all number of abuse on her. Mind you, Isabella's never done anything to this man. Isabella has done nothing but show him love. And how does he treat her? There's hints at physical abuse, not even hints. He full on puts hands on her. There is hints at emotional abuse. Like, he really hurts this girl. He tries to hang her dog. Now, it's implied that the dog survives and that Nellie's able to save the dog, but that doesn't
Right.
matter. Heathcliff tried to kill this dog. It's implied that he SAs Isabella. It's implied
Resulting in a pregnancy.
resulting in a pregnancy. Now, there's no direct quotes that show this, but it's all handled in a very, and by this I mean the SA, but it's all handled in a very delicate Victorian era sense of basically his language sounds very violent towards the sexual act that he does with Isabella. So
Yes.
you have to read into a little bit more. It's not direct evidence. There's a difference between direct and indirect evidence. With indirect evidence, you have to make a lot more assumptions in a way. You can make interpretations, but everybody might have a different interpretation. So there's indirect evidence, interpretive evidence that he SAs Isabella. Although must be noted at this time, the idea of essaying your own wife is unheard of. You are basically your husband's property at this time. So,
Right.
but from
And
a modern lens, it's not gentlemanly, that's for sure, especially for the girl's first time.
and he also blames it on her. He calls
Yeah,
her all kinds of names of sluts and whores. And the fact that she tries to appease him, he tries to spin it around as, oh, she liked it. Well, when you're abused and you're afraid of what might happen to you, sometimes you do try a number of different methods to shelter yourself, to maybe, oh, I'll give it to you instead of you taking from me.
yeah,
Let me acquiesce to you so that I am ready for what is about to come, rather to be unexpected and have this unexpected violence to me, whether it's physical, sexual, or otherwise. And he
yeah,
turns it to make her seem sadistic, like
yeah.
she has something wrong with her mind. And you know what? I love this part where, she's talking to Nellie about Heathcliff because she runs away. She is able to escape him. He like throws something across the
He
room.
throws a knife at her head.
Yes, he throws a knife at her head. It literally grazes and cuts her head, and she busts out the house
And can we just
running.
She busts out the house barefoot, basically in her undergarments. Like, this is how strong Isabella has gotten at the end of this novel, that she is essentially in her underwear, barefoot,
Mhm.
running towards her brother's house. Because the reason she hasn't gone to her brother before, we didn't say this, but she realizes very quickly that Heathcliff is using her as revenge against her own brother.
Yes, by
And
severing their relationship.
but also, he wants Isabella to tell Edgar, he's abusing me, he's hurting me. And Isabella tells Nellie, don't say a thing to my brother. These are the consequences of my own actions. Basically, everybody always talks about how there's nobody likable in this novel. I will say Isabella's likable because she takes accountability for her
I
own
agree.
actions. She goes, you know what? I did this to myself. I am now lying in the bed of my choices. Nellie, don't say anything to my brother. He doesn't need to have this hurt in his heart.
No, because that forwards
Truly
his
love.
plan. So
Yeah.
he just wants to grind. He mentioned this before. He wants to grind on people. And why is he grinding on Isabella? Because Catherine's dead. So now he's going to take his rage about losing his obsession on someone else.
And
And you know
Isabella
what?
isn't having it. Mm-mm.
She's not. So she puts up with this torment till she gets him to step outside of himself. And it's her opportunity to escape. And she's running and she's laughing and bleeding and getting out of town. And this is what she tells Nellie. She tells Nellie that Heathcliff is so miserable that he just keeps saying, oh my gosh, I wish I was dead. Catherine's dead. I wish I were dead too. And this is what she says to Heathcliff, kind of goading him.
I love
Heathcliff,
this quote.
if I were you, I'd go stretch myself over her grave and die like a faithful dog. The world is surely not worth living in now, is it? You had distinctly impressed on me the idea that Catherine was the whole joy of your life. I can't imagine how you think of surviving her loss. And I love that. And I was like, if you wanna just die, Heathcliff, why are you alive? Why are you
Yeah.
here?
Okay. This brings up a quote that Catherine actually throws into Heathcliff's face before she dies, which remember what I said about Isabella and Catherine being foils of one another. Isabella's basically like, if you loved her so much, go friggin' die over her. That's what you should be doing. Why are you tormenting all of us? You have your solution. Again, I maintain that Heathcliff is a coward and he can't do the things he actually claims he's gonna do. He'll wreak havoc in his wake, but he will never take accountability nor really has the cojones to carry through with actually unaliving himself, with doing all the things he needs to do to be with Catherine. And it's almost like Catherine knows this because she says, "What now?" said Catherine, leaning back and returning his look with a suddenly clouded brow. Her humor was a mere vein for constantly varying caprices. "You and Edgar have broken my heart, Heathcliff, and you both come to bewail the deed to me, as if you were the people to be pitied." So in other words, she's like, I'm the one who's dying, and both of you are throwing temper tantrums, like your life is miserable because of me, when it's really the other way around. And then she says, I shall not pity you, not I. You have killed me and thriven on it, I think. How strong you are. How many years do you mean to live after I am gone? And it says in the description that Heathcliff had knelt on one knee to embrace her. He attempted to rise at these words, but she seized his hair and kept him down. "I wish I could hold you," she continued bitterly, "till we were both dead. I shouldn't care what you suffered. I care nothing for your sufferings. Why shouldn't you suffer? I do. Will you forget me? Will you be happy when I am in the earth? Will you say 20 years hence, 'That's the grave of Catherine Earnshaw. I loved her long ago and was wretched to lose her, but it is past. I've loved many others since. My children are dearer to me than she was, and at death I shall not rejoice that I am going to her. I shall be sorry that I must leave them.'" So even Catherine's like, you're going to go on to live so many years past thee. You're going to go on and have
And
your happy
does.
little life. And
And
he
did.
does. And he does, even though he's not happy. I
He
love that it
still
sounds
lives.
like, if you're so
He has
unhappy,
children.
die.
He has
Yeah.
children. Well, I will say children. One child, biological, another child that he reared. So he has children.
Yeah.
He's not
And
happy.
no,
He had a wife.
but he has, like Isabella says, he has the means to end his own life and stop trying to commit suffering to other people because he feels like he's suffered. And I think this is basically, where we leave Heathcliff at this point. And when we
Mm.
come back to Heathcliff in the final portion of our discussion of this novel with the next generation and its finality, oh no, we've got 2 more episodes. The next
Right.
generation and then its finality. But that Heathcliff that we're going to see 20, 16 years hence is a completely different Heathcliff. Like, I would argue he's my least favorite Heathcliff because at least at this point, we still have a Heathcliff that you understand his pain. You understand why he's doing what he's doing. But after Catherine dies, and with those last words of Isabella, I'm like, die. There's no
Yeah.
reason why you need to still stick around for this. Your life adds nothing to anybody.
The only thing he has to live for is his vengeance. And that's where we end our climax, is the beginning and the development of the seeds of his vengeance. So when we go into episode 4, we're going to see the fallout of his vengeance arc. So we leave this episode with Catherine dying, her brother also dying.
Hindley, yes.
Hindley,
Hindley
yes.
also is dead at this point. We have Isabella run away to London to be a single mother. Yeah, girl, do your thing.
Yes. And now we have Edgar. It's funny how these siblings mirror each other. Edgar as a single father with what we know is a young Cathy, the second generation born. And this is just a little preview to hook us into the next few chapters. Isabella, we know, is going to have a boy.
But let's not forget that Heathcliff is also a single father to now Hindley's son, who he raised.
Hareton.
So we've got 3 only
Good
two
point.
only fathers and one only mother, with this new love triangle that is about to start with Degrassi High, the next generation, with the next generation of our characters. Hopefully, will they
Oh,
be
that's
as
not a
toxic?
triangle.
I know. I'm like, will they be as toxic as their parents? Will they be more toxic than their parents? I doubt they'll be less toxic
Will
than their
they
parents.
break the cycle? We shall find out.
We'll find
Well,
out. So, have a good
thanks
night.
for being here with us. Thanks for joining us on our discussion. We can't wait to have you join us for our next episode. And until then, bye, y'all.
Bye. And remember, the best annotations happen after dark. We'll see you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.